In order.
NBC senior Capitol Hill correspondent Garrett Haake joins me now. Garrett, as the House gavels in, it seems that Kevin McCarthy has finally made progress towards reaching the votes he needs. What concessions is he making, though, to his opposition, and how close could they get on this next vote?
Well, progress, Andrea, but I think this next vote will probably look like deja vu all over again. There's no indication that the progress that's been made behind closed doors is sufficient to change any votes just yet. The Republicans emerged from this conference call meeting they had this morning, largely singing from the same hymnal, suggesting they are making progress on an agreement to give some of the speaker's power, as you put it, back to the conference to allow for a broader diversity of ideological viewpoints, let's say, on some of these committees, giving seats to Freedom Caucus members or their allies on committees like the Rules Committee, sort of the quietly most powerful committee in the House. Beyond that, details are still sparse. And I think that's part of the challenge here, is coming up with the right algebraic equation here to balance out the needs of the 200 members who have voted for Kevin McCarthy consistently and the perhaps 15 or so who might be compelled to do so now. McCarthy's about to come to the floor behind me. Let me say a word with him. Mr. Leader, how are we feeling today?
I feel good. I think you're going to see an improvement in the vote today. We have a couple members who unfortunately are out, so we're seeing real progress.
What can you tell us about this emerging deal that you were discussing with your conference earlier today?
Well, it's things that we've been talking about. It's got a rule package we talked about earlier. I think it makes us only stronger in the long run.
Do you feel as though there's certain, are you sort of triaging some votes? Do you think there are some members who are less serious, perhaps, about getting to yes than others?
No, I think everybody wants to get there. I mean, everybody they run for office because they want to be able to accomplish things, and getting this done will make us accomplish our commitment to America.
And do you worry the message this might send to the rest of the country that Republicans aren't ready to govern?
No. My father always told me one thing. It's not how you start, it's how you finish.
Thank you. Well, Andrea, I mean, there you hear it from Kevin McCarthy. It's a lot of the same kinds of things we've been hearing from him the last couple of days. He is dug in, trying to project optimism and confidence that he can get there. You heard, again, discussion about the rules package. Remember, part of the challenge here for McCarthy is, because, as we've been talking about, Congress has to do the speaker vote first, and then any rules vote to adopt any of this agreement comes second. We've talked about the trust deficit that he has with some members. They would probably rather see that rules package locked in first before they would be willing to vote for McCarthy. It doesn't work that way. And so convincing the members that an agreement that they discussed behind closed doors is an agreement he's going to stick to all the way through the end is part of the challenge. And I think part of the reason why he appears increasingly willing to talk about it publicly.
Well, Garrett, and talking about getting it from the horse's mouth, hearing it from Kevin McCarthy as he was walking onto the floor, and you could see a little bit of progress as you were reporting from all of your great sources. Garrett, stay with us. Let's bring in MSNBC national political correspondent Steve Kornacki, NBC chief White House correspondent, Weekend Today co-host Kristen Welker, former Obama press secretary Robert Gibbs, former Republican National Committee chairman Michael Steele, and Brendan Buck, former senior advisor to House Speakers Paul Ryan, and John Boehner. Kornacki, let's talk first at the big board. 217 because one member had to go home, but he still can only lose 4. Do I have the numbers right?
Yeah, although what he just said to Garrett was interesting, because if I heard right, he said there's given a couple of members who are out today. We're aware of one whose wife just gave birth, who had to fly home. We're told that Ken Buck from Colorado, who missed a couple votes yesterday, there's reporting that he's coming back today. So my understanding was that there'd be one absence. But if I just heard McCarthy right talking to Garrett there, he was saying they might be missing a couple. That could complicate the math a little bit, especially if it's more than one and they've been voting for McCarthy. You could get in a scenario where the threshold gets lowered a little bit in terms of what he can afford to lose from 4 to 3. I think if you get a couple of absences there,
and that's all assuming that that's his number, of course, and we are assuming, of course, that the Democrats are going to hold that they've got their 212.
Yeah, the Democrats have on all 11 previous ballots all been present, all voted for Hakeem Jeffries. So as long as they continue doing that, the bottom line is this list right here. This is the list of the 21 Republicans who have not been voting for McCarthy. 20 of them have been voting for somebody else. One of them, Victoria Sparks from Indiana, has been voting present. If the magic number, let's say, is 217, and again, this magic number can change depending on absences, if people start voting present, that sort of thing. But if the magic number is 217 and you have that one Republican who we know of who's not going to be there today, then the Republicans start out with 221 present, the Democrats with 212 present. If all 212 Democrats continue voting for Jeffries, then yes, it's 4 defections at maximum, 4 voting for somebody else that McCarthy can afford. Anything more than that, voting for somebody else, and he loses. And what's going to be really interesting, I think, about this vote, obviously, we're looking to see if anybody has changed their mind. I mean, it sounds like the bar's lowering a little bit from what we heard last night in terms of expectations from Republicans. But remember, they vote alphabetically, and this list is kind of front-loaded with some of the most dug-in seeming Republican opponents of Kevin McCarthy. Andy Biggs is going to be first up. Lauren Boebert's going to be the third to vote here in terms of those who've been against McCarthy. Don't have to get that far down to get to Matt Gaetz. You get behind Matt Gaetz, you're looking at Bob Good from Virginia. Good was saying yesterday, you never have to ask me the question again. I'm always going to be against Kevin McCarthy. So if the number there is 4 that would do him in, that number, it's not hard to see him reaching that real quick here. But then, yeah, the other question is that if he does fail again on this ballot, how much progress has he made? Has he made any progress?
And what we're also watching, of course, the fact that it's front-loaded, we'll know pretty early. But we're also, of course, watching what's happening. They had called for a quorum call. So this takes a while. They're obviously stalling for time. They'd just come out of meetings. They were in meetings late last night. Brendan, how do you read the reports from Kevin McCarthy's own comments that they've made some progress, maybe narrowing a gap, but clearly not there yet?
Yeah, projecting a little of optimism. I think one thing we know right now is this is not over today. I think we can be pretty confident that this is going to continue. The question is, this deal, we don't know if it's actually a deal. We know that they've been talking about things, they're putting things on the table. Are any of these members actually biting on it, though? I have a sense that we're probably going to see a very similar vote to what we saw before. Chip Roy, congressman from Texas, who has been leading some of these conversations, has suggested that he wants a global deal where everybody comes along. I don't know if that's possible. You have some people who are never going to vote for him. And if that's the bar that they're setting, he's in big trouble. But I think the meeting they had this morning was really important for one reason. That's for Kevin McCarthy to keep his people in place. There's a deal being discussed, but he needs to make sure that his people aren't ready to back away from him while they're having these conversations.
So if the deal goes over too far towards the Freedom Caucus on rules and, the motion to vacate being only one and everything else that they're now giving away, if they start giving away subcommittee chairs, things like that, you're taking power away from some of Kevin McCarthy's stalwarts who have spent years in the vineyard, waiting to become a subcommittee chair, and then to be told, oh, no, it's going to Lauren Boebert.
That's exactly right. And I think that's some of the tension he was trying to extinguish in the conference call earlier. He heard people hearing that their subcommittee gavels are being taken away, and he wanted to say, hold on, I'm not doing that. I'm going to put some of these people on different committees, and they may be committees they haven't actually earned the right to, as you said. They haven't put in their time. So that's going to cause some angst. But I think he wanted to cool people down and tell people, hang with me, I'm working on it, don't go soft.
But as we're about to hear the gavel come down, how dangerous is it to go the weekend? Let's just listen to what the clerk is saying.
The chair counts 275 members present. A quorum is present.
Let's just see if she goes to a nomination.
The question recurs upon the election of a speaker. The tellers will please come forward and take their seats.
So, Brandon, as they get organized with the tellers who are counting along, these congressional members who are counting along with the clerk so that everybody knows they're on the same count. As I was saying, if it goes into the weekend, isn't that just not only a bad look, but you're now delaying the payroll for another week. Nobody's being paid. Staff isn't being paid. They don't have oversight. They can't go to intelligence meetings. And I was asking this question at the State Department yesterday. There's no critical issue right now, but you don't have key players because there's no member of the House. You've got a three-legged stool.
And the longer this goes, the more kind of pressure points are going to pop up, things that Congress is expected to be doing. And I think that's something that Kevin McCarthy is hoping puts pressure on some of these people. I mean, I think there's no question this is going to last into the weekend. The question is whether they're voting into the weekend. And Kevin McCarthy, I think, has a strategic question he wants to make. Does he keep them here and voting, or does he try to come up with some deal where they can break for the weekend, send people home? I don't know that he wants to do that. I don't think he wants to give people a breather. I think he needs maximum pressure. You also get into a tricky situation in weekends, though, where you don't know who's going to show up. You have people both on the Republican and the Democratic side who may just simply not be able to be there over a weekend. And that's a reality you always have. Keeping perfect attendance is very difficult. Sometimes you have big votes, and you want to make sure everybody is there. But those big votes only happen every few months. Here you've got big votes several times every day. Making sure that your attendance is perfect is difficult to do. And if he loses some of his allies, it could have a meaningful impact on the outcome.